Now Professor Zhou Shoujin to present his topic, which was supposed to be the keynote address sorry, at the beginning of our symposium. So now we have the topic 10 insights into Confucianism. Over to you, Professor Zhou Shoujin.
This is the topic, Wisdom and Education as Practical Ethics, China and Western Roadmaps. This is actually a book we've been working for quite a while, me and Professor Terry in Guangdong. The 10 observations is the preliminary outcome of the work. So I'd like to share some of the observations with the great audience. And I wish we could get any feedback. The aim of the research is to provide a general description with some key indicators of Chinese roadmaps of the practical ethics. By so doing, we want to promote the understanding of purpose, rules behind actions and decisions in the interaction and transactions. Also, to raise awareness of tensions and the capability of access to resources before and in crisis. Next, the background of the work. There are great changes have taken place in China. Everyone knows this, but from many aspects, things look just more the same than different. So why is this? So I call it a myth of China Circle. I'll come to this later. And the second point is the crisis of confidence. We are having the COVID-19 pandemic, but I think the greater pandemic is the crisis of confidence. What I'm talking about, it's what we can watch, observe here in China. And people say one thing and they do another, or that goes south by driving the chariot north. These are all Chinese sayings. That means your mind, your mouth, they don't work together, or they are separated. That's the issue. That's the background of the book, I think. So that's why I think dialogues are so crucial between cultural and then traditions on any level, any basis, but particularly on the practical basis, because such dialogues can be more comprehensible and enlightening and less challenging. Here, such discussions are more and more formidable and more and more dangerous. So I think this general dialogues between on the practical basis are quite possible and more helpful for right now. And the methodology of the research in the book. We raised the approach, what I called it as a multifaceted interactive approach, which means wisdom, which is legitimatized and transmitted by cultural and education, can shape the moral systems in specific and fundamental ways. And it is true in the other way around, which means wisdom, ethics as well, our behaviors interact constantly and systematically. This implies that the approach above mentioned, can be used in cross-cultural and ethical dialogues, and that the open dialogues, such dialogues, can bring about better understanding of the complication and the dynamics underlying different cultural wisdom and ethical traditions. So this is the approach we've been working, where we have been worked out for this research. And the other one is, or maybe it's a perspective under the MIA approach. It's a space-time continuum. The space-time continuum, which means that the practical ethics can be seen as one end of the space-time continuum, which contains messages both from the other end, the source, and from its own space-time conditions, and it has its own significance. So that's the focus of our research and the focus of our book. Next, on the basis of such approaches or methodologies, we worked out the 10 observations for outlining the whole research or the book. It has 10 observations or 10 traditions, if you want. In Chinese, we'd like to say 10 something or 3 something. The first tradition is the sage tradition. I will explain later in a little bit more detail. The second one is the Junzi tradition. The third, the tradition of integrity. And next one is the tradition of filial piety. And the fifth one is the tradition of learning. And the next one is wealth, equalitarianism. And the next one is the business and economic ethics. And the eighth one is the farming tradition and identity. And the next one is the pragmatism, tradition of religious beliefs. And the last one, and maybe the most important one, relevant one, is the tradition of narration, spirituality, and the body. So these 10 aspects of our observation, we'd like to work for more details and to organize our book and to indicate, to inform our potential readers of some essentials of Chinese culture from both the historical perspective and the present perspective. Followed, I'd like to show you 2 examples of our idea or the mere approach to the research book, how they are organized or how one can lead us to the other, how they are interreacted. This is the so-called roadmap or a flow of our idea. The first tradition, the sage tradition. What does it mean, the sage tradition? What is a sage? So here we use the term sage in the Chinese way. We certainly define it in our book, in our research. So it means the creator of, from the old perspective, that's the creator of the world, of anything. That's morality. So that's the resource of our morality. And then the Junzi, and the Junzi, so the sage tradition goes to the Junzi tradition, or the Junzi tradition originated from the sage tradition. Sage tradition is the general idea or the top idea of the moral system. And then the Junzi, what is a Junzi? Well, literally Junzi, it's a gentleman. It's a moral, it's a character of noble moral sense, sensitives. He is the inheritor of the morality, and he is the chief practitioner of the sages' moral rules. And then how the sage tradition and the Junzi tradition go to form the spiritual aspects of the society. So integrity and the moral practice. Society is well, the morality are founded and well. The sage, especially the Junzi, practice the moral practice. And then this moral hierarchy goes to family. This is also very important. Well, moral practice are carried out. The core of this virtue, this moral area is the filial piety. What does it mean, filial piety? What's the impact it has on the other aspects of the moral system? Then we come to the learning ethics, the learning tradition, educational tradition. And then it goes to social wealth. It has anything to do with the business and economic ethics. And then the tradition, the seventh tradition is about professional ethics. So how does it rage come from? Where does it come from? We go back to the history and observe this ethics from the craftsmanship and the professional ethics. What does it have anything to do with the history of craftsmanship? And then the rural areas, that's about identity and solidarity and exclusion. So that's the other side of the Chinese culture, where wherever you live in city or you live in rural areas, we share many common things. Typically, the identity, the Laoxiang, the countryside identity, or the solidarity, and the other side, exclusion of both morally and other aspects. And then the tradition 9, I call it the belief. Do we have any beliefs, or what do we believe? So we don't have religious in the modern sense, the religious sense or tradition, but it doesn't mean we don't have beliefs. So I used materialism and pragmatism to, of course, the materialism and the pragmatism both have other meanings. I will explain this. What is the Chinese perspective of materialism and pragmatism? The positive aspects, the negative aspects. And the last one is spiritual areas and ethics. That's literati and folk traditions. So with this 10 observations, we try to observe the Chinese cultural society tradition, or as the book title indicated, that's wisdom and education, how the wisdom and education were built and work from the beginning to the end. And this can answer one of our questions, why things have changed greatly. But in many ways, the country, the culture, the tradition, in many ways, they look quite the same than different. So we try to answer these questions. We try to inform our readers, familiarize our readers with some features or important aspects of the Chinese tradition, the Chinese culture. Then this is another example. This is the sample of the first chapter, the sage tradition, the first tradition we've mentioned. It's quite complicated. I'd like to go from the top on the left, the moral hierarchy of the sage tradition. So the sage tradition is all about moral or morality, or the hierarchy of a moral system. So what's the most important thing? Who presents the most important thing? The morality. And who is the practitioner who has everything to do with this sage tradition, or the moral rules, and who has nothing to do with the system. So on the top of this hierarchy is the sage. He embodies the highest natural, not only social, but also natural rules. That's why he is called the sage, the Shengren. He is characterized by being benevolent, wise. He's also the creator of rules, the source of moral powers. And of course, this term, this concept, Shengren, is not only Confucianism. It's actually, if you go to the literature, you could find it's all about Shengren, the sage. At the beginning of the history, I mean that it's not a Shang dynasty, it's a Zhou dynasty. From the new dynasty, all in a sudden people were talking about the sage, the Shengren, because old things were gone and new things are not ready. So people were talking about the bottom line or the moral principles for doing anything. And then the Junzi, it's in the medium, it's in the middle. It's the second level, the middle level of the hierarchy. The Junzi is a man of noble character, a perfect practitioner of moral rules. He who maintains and also strengthen the moral and social orders. The moral and social orders were given by or exemplified by the sage, but it needs people to carry them out. So Junzi are or is the person to accomplish this commitment. That's the Junzi, the second level. And the bottom, on the bottom is the pettyman. The pettyman is a Confucius term. It's a pettyman or commoners or common ordinary people. So these people are, according to Confucius, it's morally unconscious man, or as more easily understanding, it's ordinary people. So they have nothing to do with this. If they have a role to play, is on the bottom of the hierarchy, and be ready to for the establishment or moral rules, the sage and the Junzi to build. Well, that's the structure of the moral system. This structure fundamentally has tension in each level, within the sage level, within the Junzi level, within the Xiaoren, the pettyman level, and in between each levels. For instance, in this level, the sage. So in the sage, there's the tension is the monolism versus the dualism. Monolism means we have sage, but we also have natural rules, natural law. So the sage presents, embodies the natural law, but he is himself, it's not natural law. That's the monolism. The dualism, that's the separation. It can separate it from Junzi, from the sage and the natural law. And also the dualism developed from it, developed the anti-sage tradition like Taoism and many other schools of thoughts. And also the tension also developed from inside, it's pseudo-sages. So it's a huge temptation or people, if you have some rights or if you are in a position, privileged position, so you could pretend to be a sage, or you can cheat people, you're a sage. So this pseudo sages is quite a phenomenon in Chinese history. So the tension is from inside and from outside. And also the next level, the tension is the great way, the great way, the Tao, the natural law, and the sage. Shall we follow the great way or follow the sage? It's not a question whether they are the same, but if they are different, or in any way different, which one should we follow? So that this can be interpreted as into another issue. It's efficiency versus justice. So if we follow the sage, so we follow our moral calling, that's the justice. But if we follow our sense, our knowledge, or our conscience, we might choose the other way to follow the efficiency. So that's the struggling inside the dreams. I think we can see that we can have many facts to support this. And also Junzi and the pediment. Junzi and the pediment, because this hierarchy has very little to do with pediment. So Junzi are separated from the pediment. So this is the source of the tension, the Junzi and the pediment. How to educate pediment, how to lead the pediment. There's a metaphor which Confucius used. Junzi is the wind, and the pediment is the grass. So wherever wind grows, the pediment bent. So that's the metaphor to describe the relationship between the Junzi and the pediment. And also you can see many hypocrites in history, or just one of our questions, say one thing and do another, go south by driving the chariot north. That's all kinds of hypocrites. So this the tension, inner tension, external tension, internal tension, and it's in this pediments level. There's also tension. There are also tensions between justice and benefits. Confucianism talk a lot about this justice, thus benefits. It might mean, it might have more significance. And for Junzi, it's a big question. For Junzi, it's a big question, but sometimes for pediment, it's also a big question. Justice, to follow justice means to follow your conscience, or benefits, to follow your need, or your short-term need. And also the other tension, it's from the inside, also from inside, that the simplicity. So pediment's life are always simple. So keep this lifestyle, or to be keep this lifestyle means keep it natural, or but this real villain, they might be educated, or they might be not real pediment, but they act as pediment, or that's the tension. So you see, within each level and in between levels, there are tensions. These tensions and interactions are very crucial for to have impacts on other structures of the system. The next system is projected from this moral hierarchy. The second hierarchy is the country, is about a country or any organization of power. So the hierarchy of powers is either in moral sense or in political sense. So the top is about the sage, and then the minister or the cadres, and then the common people. So everything can move into this, can be projected into this hierarchy or system. And then, yeah, so any problems also, tensions, interactive problems can move to this system. And then it is projected again to family. The family, that means the hierarchy of power. So it's most of the same. So we call it a nation or a country. In Chinese, we call it 国家. 国 means nation, 家 means family. So we take country and family, the same thing, the 国家. It used to be 家国, also the same thing. So the family, the hierarchy of the powers, the parent adult, that's the top of the power. It means who is the core of social relation, and also the resources, which has the highest power, morality, in moral and in other sense. And in between, there's the elderly males of the family, the head of social relation and the resources. And on the bottom, it's the women and the children. This is the projection of the sage tradition and the political tradition of the system. And it's also project on any, I would say, social organizations like corporate companies and schools, universities. It's almost the same. Decision makers on the top, the middle level, cadres, and on the top, on the bottom, that's employees. In Chinese, we say employees as a 职员. 职员 means employees, but literally in English, employees, it's everyone. Decision makers are also employees. Middle, the people on the middle level are employees. But in Chinese, the 职员 only mean the bottom. So I use the employees in the sense of the Chinese word. So that's the structure projected from the left side, the moral hierarchy and power hierarchy and social relation, resources hierarchy, and the hierarchy of any other social organizations. So this is the way the tradition works. And then, so what's our different? We have something to say about this. Is it the same, or anything has changed? Yes, yeah. So the first point is for our reference or our proof. It's the first point. It's a periodical rise and down of the society. You can see if you observe the Chinese history, it rise and it down. Many works, many researchers, literary works talking about this. I described this in a moral sense. The moral leader, the leader who has good moral sense. So you have the moral leader, and then most probably you have the dutiful Jingzi, and then you have social prosperity. And then if the social society is prosperous, then it rises the demand for new moral norms. Usually, if we look back into the Chinese history, in each end of the dynasty, so or just specifically on Qing dynasty, the late areas in Qing dynasty, the late periods in Ming dynasty, when the new capitalism raised up. So there were new demand for new moral norms. So if you see the new demand of moral norms, if you see people want to change, then what are you going to do if you are on the top of the hierarchy? Usually, it's incapable moral leading. So if we watch back into history, we couldn't find any like capable moral leader, well, responsible to people's demand quickly and correctly. Usually it's incapable moral leading. And then it leads to lack of consensus and loss of goals, and then purposive corruptions. Yeah, it's a living history. And then stagnation or revolution. So this period, almost what I call it, what I would say, I found it quite a few years ago. This is 30 years rule of Chinese history. Bad time can last only 30 years. Other time, just struggling. And the second point, we want to figure out, that's also the fact. New cultural and moral elements only appear when the above tradition declined or broke up. What we see, if we see the end of Han Dynasty, Donghan, Eastern Han Dynasty, or Nanbei Chao, North and the South dynasties, or before Tang dynasties, or end up Song Dynasty, or Ming Dynasty, Yuan Dynasty, before and end of Qing dynasties, or specifically Buddhism, Christianity, and other new things came to China. It's only the moment when the old norms declined, the old tradition broke up. And the last point is our implication. It's about business. This CC, I'm sorry to use this. It's quite not right. It means a cooperate culture. corporate culture, the company's culture, must be in line with the corporate goals. The corporate goals must have short-term, long-term benefits and social benefits, environmental benefits, and everything. So, what implication we can share with business people, with our general audience about doing anything in China? So we would, or when we go to Africa, we to cooperate with people in Africa. I think the first thing we need to do is to build up good, sensitive, cooperative culture in line with our cooperative goals. So we have to think about what are our goals instead of a profit, instead of short-term um, paybacks. So this is very simple. We have more work. I'm sorry, I at present I can only show you this range of our research. We have more things to do, and we are working on this